All right, let's talk about the world's most ambitious, most over-the-top, most ridiculously extra pottery project. An art class assignment that went completely off the rails. This is the Terracotta Army, an afterlife security detail with a serious overstaffing problem. Their story begins with a simple idea. Back in the day before China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, if you were a big-shot ruler, your funeral plan involved, well, it involved a rather awkward conversation with a bunch of your servants and soldiers. The conversation basically went, "Great news. You get to come with me to the next life. Don't pack a bag. It's called human sacrifice, and by the time our guy came around, it was considered a bit tacky. Bad for morale, terrible for retaining employees. So, the emperor decided on a major technical upgrade, a pivot from, let's say, biological assets to inorganic duplicates. He commissioned a whole army of clay dudes to protect him in the great beyond. It was the ancient world's greatest humanitarian leap forward in funerary services, mostly because your job security no longer depended on the boss's life expectancy. And here's the bonkers part. This gargantuan undertaking, project that involved a workforce bigger than some modern cities, is mentioned absolutely nowhere, not in a single historical text. For over 2,000 years, this entire army just chilled underground, in secret, until 1974, when a few farmers digging a well during a drought accidentally woke them up. It wasn't planned archaeology. It was more like the planet had an itch, gave a little scratch, and accidentally revealed a 2,200-year-old secret military base. Now, when I say this project was big, you're not quite getting it. You think assembling that bookshelf from IKEA was a challenge. Try this. At its peak, this single project employed up to 700,000 laborers. That's like dedicating the entire population of Seattle to making sure one guy has enough friends in the afterlife. They toiled for nearly 40 years on this. The result? An estimated 8,000 soldiers, 130 chariots, and over 600 horses, all tucked into these murder basement chic underground pits. And get this, at our current pace, with all our fancy modern technology, we can restore about 14 of these warriors a year. At that rate, finishing the job will only take us a few more centuries. These soldiers have been on duty for 2 millennia, and their current job, being stared at by millions of tourists, is probably more work than they ever did when they were just clay. But let's talk about the urban legends, because this is where things get spooky. There's a popular myth that these aren't just clay figures. Oh no. The story goes that they took real, living soldiers, coated them in clay, and then, you know, baked them. A truly horrifying idea, propped up by the fact that they're all life-sized and weirdly individual. Except, nope, it's complete hogwash. Scientific analysis of the warrior fragments shows exactly 0 human bits inside. Thank goodness. The truth is something else entirely. Something sufficiently terrifying. This wasn't cruelty. It was ancient mass production. They had molds for torsos, arms, legs, standardized parts. But the faces, oh, the faces were custom jobs. Archaeologists have found about 8 to 10 basic face molds, and then the artisans would go to work, adding unique mustaches, tweaked eyebrows, different hairstyles. It was exactly like the character creation screen in a video game. Should I give this guy the disappointed dad mustache or the eternal scowl? So, the real horror isn't what's inside them, but the sheer mind-numbing efficiency of it all. Now, you probably picture them like this, a sea of grim, stony gray, very serious, very artistic, very wrong. That look, that distinguished monochromatic aesthetic we all admire, it's the result of a catastrophic preservation failure. These guys were originally painted, and not just a little bit. We're talking bright reds, pinky greens, and a fabulous custom-made color called Chinese purple. This army wasn't somber, it was gaudy. It was a rainbow legion, a full-blown military parade float. but the paint was applied over a layer of lacquer. When archaeologists dug them up and the warriors hit the dry air of Xi'an, that lacquer layer would curl up in about 15 seconds. 4 minutes later, poof, the color would just flake right off. The majestic, timeless beauty we admire today is actually just majestic, timeless decay. We're basically celebrating a beautiful mistake. Let's get weirder. Let's talk about the details. In 1999, they found one, just one, a kneeling archer whose face was painted entirely green. Now, the experts have all sorts of serious theories. Maybe he was from an allied tribe. Maybe it was a psychological warfare tactic to scare the enemy. Maybe he was part of a special shaman unit. But I have another theory. I think after 30 years of making 8,000 identical-ish dudes, some artisan named Lee just got bored. I think he looked at his bucket of green paint, looked at the foreman's back, and thought, you know what would be hilarious in about 2,200 years? And now, entire academic papers are dedicated to Lee's little prank. And what about their fashion choices? Qin soldiers apparently had their priorities straight. First, an impeccable hairstyle. I'm serious. Most of the regular soldiers don't even have helmets. But their hair? Tied up in perfect, tight buns and top knots. Can't have flyaways when you're conquering the afterlife. Second, making sure everyone knows who's in charge. The generals are nearly 2 meters tall and have these fancy ribbons tied on their armor. 8 of them. Lower-ranking officers have fewer ribbons. It was all about the accessories. Head protection? Optional. Looking fabulous? Mandatory. But the most wonderfully absurd detail is on the kneeling archers. Remember the green-faced guy? Well, if you could flip him over, you'd see the bottom of his shoes. The artisans carved them with incredible detail. You can see the treads. You can see the tiny, delicate stitch marks. A masterpiece of craftsmanship. And here's the thing. Once that warrior was placed in the pit, absolutely no one, not the emperor, not the artisans, not us, was ever supposed to see the bottom of that shoe again. It was a detail created purely for the dirt to appreciate. It's a level of obsessive perfectionism that is both awe-inspiring and slightly unhinged. It's like writing a beautiful poem on the inside of a soup can before you seal it forever. So what happened when these silent, stoic soldiers were finally rediscovered? Well, naturally, it led to a very human, very petty kerfuffle. The official discoverer is a farmer named Yang Jifa. His reward for uncovering one of the greatest archaeological sites in human history? The equivalent of about 13 cents. He could barely buy a popsicle. But then, things got complicated. The other farmers who were there that day all started claiming they were the real discoverer. Soon, you had multiple old guys sitting in souvenir shops, all signing autographs as the man who found the army. One of them even argued that everyone his age in the village was a discoverer because, and I quote, we all saw it. The most profound discovery of the 20th century immediately devolved into a small-town squabble over autograph rights. You just can't make this stuff up. Which brings us to today. An army designed to be a unique, eternal, one-of-a-kind guardian is now a brand. They've faced a new enemy, the knockoff. All over China, you can find bootleg terracotta armies, some with double eyelids and bright red lipstick. The official museum tried to sue them, but the defense was simple. How do you copyright something that's 2,200 years old? So the museum did something brilliant. They registered the terracotta warrior as a 3D trademark, like the shape of a Coca-Cola bottle. The emperor's personal bodyguards are now intellectual property. His dream of absolute, exclusive ownership is turned into a licensing agreement. And in the end, their resurrection isn't in the afterlife, but in our digital one. There are apps that use facial recognition to tell you which warrior you look like. They've become memes, pop art, the silent stars of endless social media posts. An army, built with terrifying ambition to conquer death itself, now has a new, eternal duty. helping tourists find their ancient doppelganger for an Instagram story. And you know what? I think they'd be secretly pleased. It's a much quieter gig.